Well, hey everyone, welcome into Pushing the Limits. LisaTamati here, your host, and today I have Daniel Ebbett with me. Daniel, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you.
Hey Lisa, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and to dive into all things light.
Yeah, we are going to now. You have a huge reputation in this world of red light therapy and blocking blue light. You're the CEO and founder of blockbluelight.co.nz, where people can check everything out, and we're going to have links in the show notes and all of that sort of good stuff. But I want to start with the blue light blocking glasses, because lots of people see people now wearing blue light blockers, and we have a circadian rhythm. We're tied to our evolution, and we have changed the world that we live in massively in the last 100 years, but in the last 10 years, even with the new type of lighting systems that we've got, the LED and the incandescent being sort of outphased. And now brought into law almost, that you can't have incandescent lighting, which is really just basically rolling out to the entire world a new experiment, along with many other experiments that they've done recently. Then just like, hang on a minute, you've just, without testing this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what is blue light? Why do we need to have it sometimes, not have it other times? What spectrum is this, and why should we be not having blue light at night time?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, when you look at that, like some people go sort of say like, and you brought up a good point. It's like, well, like when we do and don't need it. Some people think, oh, well, I've heard blue light's bad for me, so I've got to like block it all,
Yeah.
and it's like it's the devil, and it's and that's not the truth, right? And that's where like people can kind of get a little bit uneducated on the topic. So blue light, or light in general, there's two forms of it. There's what we call natural light, and then there's artificial lights, and you really need to distinguish, because they are both forms of light, but they are very different in their makeup. So we've got natural light, which is light that's emitted from the sun. That contains a lot of blue light in it, but it also contains all the colors of the color spectrum, like the rainbow essentially. And that's what we'd call full spectrum light. So full spectrum light we get from outdoors during the daytime from the sun. Now, what's so good about that? Why do we need that? Particularly the blue light from natural light will essentially come into our eyes. We have some receptors in our eyes that are not for seeing. So in the late 1990s, around 1999, they actually discovered, we always thought that our eyes had the rods and cones in them that took in signals of light and sent a signal to our brain so we could formulate eyesight and see. But in 1999, they found there's other receptors actually set in the eye, particularly like blind people still have these receptors, right? And they're called melanopsin receptors. And what those receptors do is they respond particularly to shortwave light, which is blue light. Comes in, and so they get activated under blue light. That sends a signal into our brain, into the central clock system in our brain, and then essentially that will then instruct the body to produce particular hormones and neurotransmitters, and that's particularly around wakefulness hormones. So you got your cortisol, adrenaline will be released, which is what we need during the daytime to make us feel awake, alert. Also, it's heavily responsible for the dopamine production as well. So dopamine's a neurotransmitter that essentially regulates our mood and our energy levels. So very, very important that we are stimulating that pathway at the right times of the day. So the key thing is, though, is when we're outdoors under natural light, there is blue light, but there's also green, yellow, red, and orange, infrared, and UV light. So and it's in relatively even balance. Now, if we look at when we come indoors under artificial light, we're no longer in natural full spectrum light. So the big difference is the type of light sources that we're using indoors is LED lighting, and that's really become a shift in the last, say, 10 years. I would say there's been even less at that time, but I mean, probably in the last like 5-6 years, it's like just ramped up to the point you even said where like it's becoming illegal, literally, to possess or import or purchase older style lighting, which was incandescent or halogen lighting, which is like what we call like a heat source type lighting. When I mean a heat source type lighting, it means it produces a spectrum that's very natural and it's like a fire, right? So it actually is a full spectrum light.
Wow.
It has a lot of the infrared light in it, which is why we feel heat from it. But the indoor light we've got now, LED lighting, very, very, very high in a very specific band of blue light, and pretty much lacking a lot of the yellow, orange, and red light.
Wow.
Now, why is that an issue? It's an issue for two reasons. So if we look at, first of all, why that's an issue during the daytime and why it's an issue during the nighttime. So if we look at the daytime, the issue is when we look at light and we look at how we measure it. So light is our wavelengths and they're measured in nanometers. So blue light is a short wavelength. So the nanometers are lower down the spectrum. So they range from like 400 to 500 nanometers. Now, because they're a shorter wavelength, they carry a lot more energy with them. And so what that means is when you isolate that form of light, it can cause a lot of oxidative stress, cell damage, cell breakdown. So why it becomes an issue is that when it's coming into our eyes, it's causing oxidative damage into our eyes. So we particularly see that as like eye strain, headaches, migraines.
Wow.
Even on our skin, it ages our skin faster. And so not ideal, right? And because we're in the environments we're in now are very much just a very concentrated form just of that type of light. And then if you look at the other end of the light spectrum, we have red light. So blue light's down one end, red light's down the other end. And that's long wavelength light. And the difference between that is it is a lot more, it's the opposite of blue light, right? It's healing, regenerative, restorative type of light. So when you go outside in nature, I mean, it's like red light's the antidote to blue light. It's imbalance. So the net effect is it doesn't have a negative effect on us. It's all in balance. We come indoors, we strip all the beneficial healing wavelengths out. We leave all the what we call damaging wavelengths in. It's kind of a recipe, and it's not setting you up for kind of like optimal health indoors.
Yep. And sleep and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we've just talked about the daytime here, right? Just having some people will think, well, what's the difference between indoors and outdoors during the daytime? Well, it's quite significant, right? And because most of us are living an indoor lifestyle, we have to go to work, we have to make a living. We live comfort. Like when it's winter, we don't go outside, like all that sort of thing. And we're constantly exposed, whether it's the lighting in our homes, it's the screens that we're on during the daytime, it's our phones, it's everywhere. It's kind of like we're bathing in a bath of blue light. Yeah. Now that's only the issue during the daytime. When we get into the nighttime, it becomes even more of a problem. So if we look at our kind of the light cycles in nature, everything has a cycle, right? And it kind of runs on a 24-hour cycle. There's a lot of things that run on a 24-hour cycle in nature, and it's all governed by the sun, really. So the sun kind of governs a lot of the life on Earth and how it operates. So under the natural environment, we've got blue light in the environment during the daytime. We're getting exposed to that. It's making us feel awake, alert, so we can operate during the day and function. And then the sun starts to set, right? Once the sun sets, there is no natural blue light in our environment. We go back thousands of years. What do we use for light? We used fire. What color is fire? It's yellow, orange, and red, infrared light as well. And then we moved to candles. Candles, same thing, not really any blue light in there. Again, this is a heat source type of light. Then we invented the light bulb, and we moved into the incandescent light bulb, starting to shift into an area of what we would consider non-optimal light in the evening. Not too bad though. It had a small amount of blue light in there. Now, why does that become an issue once we start to introduce blue light at night? It's completely unnatural, and our biology is not set up to
the melatonin gets suppressed, basic from the melanopsin cells, receptors.
Correct. So essentially, like, we've evolved over tens and hundreds of thousands of years, and that's how our biology is created, right? And it's essentially created operating under the light cycles of the sun. And now what we're doing is completely dysregulating that. So when the sun sets, what do we all do? We turn on all the lights in our home. We don't let darkness come in. We live in a world now where the world never sleeps, right? We're trying to extend the time that we're awake. And so what we're doing, turning on all the lights in our home now, high levels of blue light, your ancestral brain really can't understand the difference between that, and it's kind of giving you the same levels of blue light you get at solar noon. So your circadian rhythm gets completely dysregulated. Suddenly it starts to, you go through the day, it's expecting the blue light to drop down, but suddenly it just continues to elevate as you go into the evening. And what that does from a biological standpoint is it continues to elevate our stress hormones, or the wakefulness hormones, which is your cortisol and adrenaline. So naturally, those are supposed to drop down when blue light starts to come down and out of your environment. And what's supposed to come up is our like restful hormones. So that's our melatonin levels. So melatonin is what they call a sleep hormone. It's actually much more than that.
Yeah, much more.
It's one of the most potent antioxidants in our body, which floods our body when we're sleeping. And what happens is essentially your body works in a way where like there's opposing hormones, right? So like when you've got high adrenaline, high cortisol, that means you're going to have low melatonin, which is actually what you want during the daytime. It's supposed to inverse at nighttime, where all those wakefulness hormones drop down and the melatonin will rise up to allow you to get into a deep and restful sleep. But what's happening now is we're prolonging that, or we're having a phase shift in our circadian rhythm, because we turn on the lights on our home, we look at all the screens, and our brain continues, the melanoxin receptors in our eyes continue to get the blue light, continue to tell our brain through its central clock system that it's daytime, so it continues to secrete the hormones. So the system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's just, it does not understand.
We live in a new world.
Correct. I mean, evolution takes thousands of years to evolve and adapt to, right? We've just fast tracked this from like not having, from going from fire to like a light source that wasn't too bad for us, to just one of the worst types of lighting. In the space of 10 years, we just completely changed all our light sources to something that's completely unnatural and what we shouldn't be exposed to in the evening.
Stuffing it. I mean, I do a lot of functional medicine testing, a lot of Dutch testing, hormonal testing, looking at cortisol awakening responses, and cortisol over 24-hour periods and things. And like I'm pretty much every second person, if not more, has got disrupted cortisol, so, and this comes also from other things like burnout and gut health and things. But also, one of the major things is you see the cortisol rising at night and it's low in the morning. So they're groggy in the morning, they can't get going. And then I know, okay, we got to talk about circadian rhythms, and we got to talk about what you need to do from the time you get up it's not just what you do just before bed either, is it? It's what you're doing in the morning. So like getting outside into natural sunlight the first thing, if you possibly can, even if it's for 5 minutes. And sometimes that's all I manage, with my crazy day, is to get out and just get a little bit of sunlight before you get into that day routine, so that we lift that cortisol up, we reduce that melatonin, and then in the inverse at night, we put the blue light blocking glasses on at night time when the sun goes down. I try to see sunsets. I try to, make sure I don't see the sunrise that often, because it's a bit too early at the moment. But if you get out early and get that early morning, that resets the clock already, and then, we can talk about things like doing exercise and getting out in nature and being in greenery, which reflects that infrared spectrum. All of those sorts of things have an effect on that. So it's not just what you do just before bed, but throughout the day. Would that be correct?
Yeah, correct. And that's one of the biggest things that we see, is where someone will say buy a set of our glasses, wear them at nighttime, and they're not really getting the results they're after. And because it's not as simple as just looking at what you're doing at nighttime. Like getting a good night's sleep starts from when you wake up in the morning.
Exactly.
And it's actually quite important what you do during the daytime. And why it's so important is, so first of all, getting that morning light, getting outside and getting natural light into your eyes first thing in the morning. What that does is it resets your circadian rhythm, or it anchors that central clock system in your brain, because it's kind of trying to operate on a 24-hour cycle. But the way it operates is through light signals. So if you're not giving it the right light signals, that's where it gets confused and gets dysregulated. So the way you entrain that is you give it the same signal every 24 hours. It starts that cascade of events for the next 24 hours. That's very, very important. The next reason why what we need to do during the daytime is we need to make sure we're getting lots of natural light during the daytime. Because what that does is it, particularly the infrared light spectrum from the sun, when that interacts with our skin, it helps us produce serotonin and dopamine. Now, serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. So it's essentially a way of looking at it. It's like the raw material that the body uses to actually make melatonin. So if you don't have optimal serotonin levels that are produced from natural sunlight, no matter how much blue light you block in the evening, you still have suboptimal levels of melatonin because you don't have enough serotonin. And so it's very, very important that you're actually optimizing your lifestyle to maximize your serotonin levels. So if you think about serotonin, dopamine, kind of most people know them as like mood regulators, right? So people that generally have depression will have a dysregulated serotonin levels, and essentially that's what antidepressants are trying to override that system and increase your body's ability to use serotonin or increase the half-life of serotonin.
Yep.
And so, like, if you think about how you feel when you're outside in the sun, right? I don't know people that think they don't feel good, right? Because it is actually increasing that serotonin in your body, right? So it's so important that you actually get out.
And not many people know that, eh? Like most people know, like we get our vitamin D activation, or from the sun, but most of us have been scaremongered into thinking that the sun is evil, the sun is bad, it's going to burn you, it's going to cause skin cancer, sunblock every damn bit of your body, cover yourself up from head to toe. You don't want wrinkles, you don't want age spots. You don't want this. Why is all that, like this all happened around the same time as we started changing all our light things. And like, I've never liked sunscreen. I never knew why I didn't. I just intuitively, and I think there's a place for it and the right type of sunscreen, like if you're out surfing and you might want to put on a zinc or a mineral sunscreen or something. But when we block everything from hitting our skin, we are disrupting all of these natural things that go on. Can you comment on that? Like a lot of people get the vitamin D analysis, and vitamin D, my God, there's 700 things in the body. Like you need vitamin D, and a lot of what I'm seeing too in functional medicine space is that so many people are coming in with very low levels of vitamin D, even people that are in the sun, and that could have other reasons, and won't get into that. But the serotonin piece, I don't think many people understand that that's actually coming partly from the sun as well, and that affects your gut health and what your gut's producing, and then that affects your melatonin. And this is just like, we're just such evolutionary connected beings. We've got to go back. We've got to hack ways of living in this one world that we have to live in, but actually go back. And this is where what you guys do at Block Blue Light do so well, because you've really researched up the wazoo. How do I work in an office environment and not die?
Well, interesting point you make about the sun and sunscreen, right? And the way I've always looked at it and said, well, nothing on this earth thrives or survives without sunlight. It's life, gives life to everything on this planet. So to think that we need to like avoid it and block it, just makes no sense, right? You're gonna be suboptimal in terms of health. Now that doesn't mean you should go out in the sun and just stay out
midday
there.
sun.
So I mean, there's a number of reasons why the lifestyle we live, the sun can be dangerous, and it's because we're not. A lot of people have got this fear of the sun, right? That's being drilled into us. So when they do go out in the sun, they don't have the tolerance that you need to build up. So what happens when you actually go out into the sun and you have UV light onto the skin? It makes your body produce melanin. So melanin is a pigment inside our skin, which makes the skin increase in color. It's like a tan, right? And so what that does is it then is a natural sunscreen, right? It then regulates how much UV light is actually absorbed into the body. So So as you build up your melanin levels in your skin, your body is able to regulate how much UV light it can take in. But what we do is we don't get any exposure, so our skin's very white, and then we put on sunscreen and just try to use chemicals essentially to not regulate but completely block it. The other big part of the problem is sunglasses. So everyone goes outdoors, they put sunglasses on. So what does that do? It blocks light coming into our eyes. So particularly it blocks UV light. Wow. So you go outdoors, you put on your sunglasses. Now your eyes are getting no UV light into them because they will block 100% of UV light. Wow. So the signal into your brain is now there is no UV light in the environment. So then it doesn't instruct the body to actually produce melanin at all because it doesn't need to.
Wow, that's a new one on me. Wow.
So wearing sunglasses makes you burn easier.
Wow.
Your body doesn't do the natural things it's supposed to because it can't. It's confused. You're confusing it because it's not getting the natural light signals that are in the environment to respond to what light signals in the environment. The human body is very smart, and the system has been designed for us to live outdoors under the sun and respond to that environment. But we use all these different things now. We use things to block the natural light. We can't get the right signals. We hop indoors under the wrong types of light. And then we use particular chemicals and stuff to block light frequencies from the skin. Now, this is all kind of there's ways around, a person that is actually accustomed to living in nature and living in with the environment will be able to go outdoors. They won't get burnt from the sun. They won't be able to stay out, in midday sun in the middle of summer because that's not smart. You look what animals do. They seek shade, right, at noon, sort of at the highest point of UV. But, the body can adapt to the environment. It's not something we should suddenly fear and think that we don't need it, because pretty much to be optimal with health, you need to be, aligned with the environment, aligned with the sun and because it's providing a whole host of benefits from, like you said, from the from vitamin D, through to how our mood's regulated, to how our energy's regulated, to how our sleep's regulated. So some fundamental things of how we feel and how healthy we are regulated through the light from the sun.
Yep. And I mean, even when I go into the hospital setting, which unfortunately I've been in more often than I wanted to be with mum and stuff, they're living under these fluorescent, horrific lights. This is the doctors and the nurses too, and they're doing night shifts. And then you wonder why they've got weight issues and metabolic dysregulation. And, it's just horrific for those people working in that environment, but also for the patients who are the sickest of our people, and they're exposed to this crap light all day. And then if you go into a hospital room and there is so many of the little LED lights everywhere, there's little lights that are just the whole night. Like when mum was in there, she broke a hip recently and there was no curtain on the window. I mean, I went and got a curtain and stuck it up to try to block it. And then I put, sleep mask over her eyes and tried to turn off as many lights as I possibly could, all that electricity, all of this sort of stuff. And this is our sick people. How the hell are they meant to be getting well in this environment? And
hospital was one of the worst places to heal and recover. It's actually the moment you can get out of there, the better.
Get the hell out as fast as you can.
The worst type of light environment's got fluorescent lighting. Have it on at night time. It's just there's nothing conducive around recovery and healing in a hospital.
No, it's really even a healthy person, you put them in a hospital, they'll get sick. And you see that even the people that are working there, unfortunately exposed to that, and then shift work, which is really not good for our circadian rhythm balance. And a lot of shift workers, I think there's studies, and don't quote me on this, but they die a lot earlier generally if you've done shift work all your life, because you're going to age quicker and you're going to have metabolic dysregulation and things like that. So there's a whole lot of things. And I know there was one study that I was reading recently where they put people with COVID outside in the sunlight for 15 minutes a day, and I've forgotten who the doctor was that did it, and they had amazing results. That just 15 minutes of natural sunlight for people that had COVID was helpful. Not going to fix everything, but it was helpful, it shortened their time in hospitals and stuff in the study. Can't quote it. I'll see if I can find it. But
on shift work, they've classified shift work as a class 2 carcinogen. So same as smoking.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's come from like International Agency Research of Cancer, I think, have
Wow.
classified that. So they're essentially saying like shift workers have
Yep.
got just the same level of risk of smoking as
Yes.
shift work now.
Yeah, and that's like, and you know, one of the things that when we're working with cancer patients and stuff, a lot of the cancer clients, and I've had mum on this, high levels of melatonin. Why? Because one, as we get older, we seem to get less melatonin, but melatonin is a powerful antioxidant and has lots. I mean, you know, talk to your doctor and all of that sort of, not giving medical advice here, but melatonin is often used in protocols for cancer, to fight against cancer, for a good reason. And it's one of the markers that look at functional medicine too, if we get a chance, is what are your melatonin levels doing? Because it's such a powerful antioxidant, not just as a sleep hormone. Look, it really has a powerful effect in the body, as well as, you know. So there's just so much nuance to this whole conversation. And when we're sitting on screens all day, like I'm doing right now under an artificial light, and you know we can't avoid it all the time. You've got glasses on now. Can you explain the daytime glasses versus the night? Because I get, you know, like I think most people get, oh, block the blue light at night, but why do I need to block it when I'm on screens or even under LED lights?
Yeah, yeah. So they're very different types of glasses that you need to use, and I guess to take a step back, like the blue light glasses industry has now become it's very hard to navigate because something becomes quite popular. You have a lot of
Yeah.
uh, opportunists come in to make a quick buck sort of thing without really understanding the science behind it. So and it's almost become more of like a fashion thing now versus
Yeah.
like science. So that's why you got to be quite careful about the types of glasses you're selecting, not only to make sure you're getting the right ones for the right time of the day, but then to make sure that they're actually kind of in line with what you need them to do. So with that said, like during the daytime, you're wanting to have a pair of glasses that are not eliminating all blue light, for the reasons we kind of talked about earlier, and how blue light is required during the daytime to kind of make you feel awake, alert.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're indoors, it's still you can't just block it all. So what you need to look at doing is having a set of glasses that are going to reduce that intensity down, so it's kind of more balanced. So it balances. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be more in balance with kind of like the reds, yellows, and oranges that are still naturally in the environment. And so what that normally looks like is you can kind of do it two ways with two different types of glasses. You've got like more clearer looking lenses. Now, I'm going to put this out, 95% of all the clear lens blue light glasses on the market and are kind of like a scam, I guess is the
Yeah.
way to put it. Like,
Yeah.
and that's if you go to the likes of Cotton On, any of these
Yeah.
eyewear fashion brands, all
Yeah.
that, they don't understand the science of light at all. And so what they do is they just put this, they only get some standard kind of optical frames. They use a clear lens and they just put this like coating on the outside that reflects blue light, or you can try and like kind of see blue in them. And those don't work. I mean, the
Yeah.
reason they don't work is we talked about how light's measured in nanometers, and blue light ranges from 400 to 500. Now, all the artificial light sources that we get exposed to from our screens to our lighting, everything, whilst that blue light band is 400 to 500, the only light really coming off those is about 450 to 460 nanometers. It's a very narrow bandwidth of blue light that is being produced. So if your glasses aren't actually filtering that narrow bandwidth of blue light down, they're not really working.
Right.
And when you dive into these other glasses that are around with that coating on the outside, and we've tested a lot of them as well, they will block UV light and violet light, and they
Which you
will
don't
filter
want.
it. Not really. I mean, my screens aren't emitting UV light and they're not
No.
emitting violet light, so there's no point blocking them. So, but in the blue light spectrum, they'll filter about 20% of blue light up to 420 nanometers, and none at 450 to 460.
Gotcha.
So they can't
Wow.
even get into that area of what you need to filter. So then my question is, what are they doing? Well, they're not doing anything. But then people are sitting there going, these are amazing. You know, I've seen them all over like TikTok and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
yeah.
Instagram, latest phase. And I'm like, well, I don't think I can think is it's placebo, right? They think they're working so they're better, but the reality is they're not. The reality is that it is doing damage to your eyes, and it is like suboptimal. So you need a set of glasses that are going to filter the 450 to 460 nanometer blue light, and that can't be achieved by just using a clear lens with a coating on the outside.
Yeah.
You need to actually have special pigments inside the lens, so when the light passes through, that coating reflects. So it can only reflect a small amount of blue light, but as the blue light passes through, these actually pigments absorb that light in. So when it comes through the other side, that light has been absorbed, or particular frequencies of that light have been absorbed. So then they're not going into your eyes. And so we have a set of like what we call clear lens glasses, because they're not technically clear. They have a slight tint to them because that's what the pigments are in the lens. But to anyone that was wearing them, most people just see them as normal looking glasses. They'll see a bit of that reflective blue stuff on it because we have that on there as well to get that lower portion blue light. So that's one option. The other option is what I'm wearing now, which is like a more of a yellow lens glasses. And because the clear lens ones we have, they'll filter 50% of that blue light, that narrow bandwidth spike down. They'll filter it by 50%, which for most people is pretty good. It's gonna provide a lot of benefits. It's gonna help with the eye strain, the headaches, the migraines, and stuff like that. But if you want that kind of next level of protection, and I mean the yellow lenses, what they do is they completely eliminate that blue light spike. Right. So they will take the 450 to 460 nanometers and eliminate it by 100%. And then from 460 onwards through to 500, it lets all the blue light through. So it's kind of you're getting the best of both worlds. You're eliminating the spectrums that we know are coming from all our artificial light sources, and then it's letting through the blue light that's naturally in our environment. So it's still allowing you your brain to know it's daytime. You're still getting blue light stimulation and stuff, but it's not having these negative effects. The disadvantage is it's a yellow lens, right? So some people don't.
It's cool.
I guess it just depends on people's preference, right? They might be in a corporate setting and they might, I don't want to wear these weird glasses and draw attention to myself. Well, then it's probably not for them. But I personally like them. It brightens everything up. It actually kind of lifts your mood a bit. Like you put them on a dark, cold, rainy day and it looks like sunny and warm. So those are kind of the two options. I mean,
and then the night ones, you got the full blue light blocking glasses that really do take out the whole blue. Yeah,
and so then nighttime, like you can't use these clear lens glasses, like anything. Even ours aren't really that good for it. But like you just see the marketplace flooded with them, and they talk about improving your sleep and doing all this, and I'm like, they're not going to do anything for like preserving your melatonin levels at all. So the reality is, you need to block 100% of blue light at night. If you block 95 or 90, it's still not going to be very optimal because that small amount coming through still triggers that pathway telling your brain that there's blue light in the environment, so it will suppress melatonin. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't do anything. Like if you had a set of glasses that block 90%, they would certainly help, but there's still that blue light stimulation taking place and it's still suboptimal. So you need something that blocks 100%. And we've got two options. We have like a lighter, like an amber tint, and then we've got more of a darker orange red tint. And the main difference between them is we created the red ones off the back of a piece of research that came out in the early 2000s. And what that looked at, it looked at every single spectrum of light, the nanometers of light, and what level of melatonin suppression was happening. And so the results of that essentially were, they graphed it essentially at like the level of suppression, and it created a big bell curve. And so the peak suppression point was, you guessed it, 460 nanometers, which is all the stuff that we're being exposed to in the evening. That is actually having the most disruptive wavelength, which you like. They created all this lighting. It's almost like
deliberate.
It's like, why was it exactly in
that range?
Yeah. But what the study showed was, so blue light finishes at 500 nanometers. Past the 500, it was still suppressing our melatonin by significantly less than the peak at the 460, but to the point where you're still like, well, it's having a suppression effect. So, and it went pretty much about 3/4 of the way through the green light spectrum. So green light ranged from 500 to 580. And so what they found is all the way to 550 nanometers there was suppression in melatonin. So what we did is said, well, okay, let's create a set of glasses that eliminate that exact frequency. So we go right to 550 nanometers and we eliminate all the blue and green light.
Blue and green, yep.
And then we let that last little bit of green light through at 550 onwards, and we just because if you just start to block more and more of the spectrums, it makes the glasses darker and darker and darker to the point where they're unusable and they're not functional.
Can't function,
And then people don't wear them. So we kind of tried to find the sweet spot where we align the lens with the science and said, well, let's block it to where it says, and then let's let everything through that has been shown to not have an effect or have any negative impact on our melatonin levels in the evening.
So the red ones are the sort of, so which ones would you buy if you were buying just one of those pairs? Like you would block that whole one, the more yellowy amber? Yeah,
I personally would, and that's what I use. But like, I mean, it's just there's different types of people out there with like different levels of tolerance. I mean, it does shift or change or distort the colors that you see in the evening.
Yeah,
I mean, I find like people that are all in and understand it and want to optimize their health and sleep, and
take the orangey.
They'll go for that because they know it's the best. But if you've got the people that are on the fence and think, oh, I'm not sure about this, we kind of found that it's probably better to start someone on the lighter one to try and get them to buy into it, to use them, because particularly even like in some of the older population, they're like, oh, I'm not wearing that. That's terrible. Like I can't see anything, right? So, and then they kind of just write it off versus like trying to get someone to like at least be open to it. Hey, try these. There are certainly use cases for the lighter ones, and they still do have a very good effect, right? They're still eliminating all of the blue light.
Just not all the green spectrum ones. Right. And now let's just briefly, because I really want to get to the red light panels, because that's my passion too at the moment. But before we do that, the lighting in your house, you've also got a whole range of lamps and portable lamps and reading lamps, and then overhead downlights, which you can change out. And like if you're going to do your whole house, might be very expensive, but you might want to pick your room or pick your places where you use your blue light blocking downlights. Why? So at night time, besides wearing the glasses, what can we do to protect our eyes? Like I have to get up every night to my mum 3-4 times a night, and I've got one of your blue light blocking glass lamps next to her bed, so I use that when I'm looking after her, and that hopefully, and I'm wearing my blue light blocking glasses as I go out as well. I put those on as well, just to really double down on trying to not lose my melatonin. But what would you suggest people start with and look at in as far as their whole house goes? Like what would be the most important things to consider if they can't afford to replace every downlight in the house?
Obviously the glasses are the first place to start, but then the issue you have with glasses is, first of all, it's a one-to-one relationship, so it's like not everyone in the household benefits from you wearing glasses.
No.
So and then it requires more of a habit where you actually have to put them on, and sometimes people don't know where they are, that sort of thing. So they certainly do have their place. In my view, their place is like when you're on a screen or you're watching TV on a computer, on a device, you should have glasses. But the lighting is really good because, first of all, they have shown as well melanopsin receptors that we talked about in our eyes that respond to blue light. They do exist in our skin. They actually found that just like in 2010, right? There's a piece of research that came out and showed that melanopsin receptors are present in our skin. So blue light interacting with our skin as well, to a lesser degree, will start to influence our central clock system and start to influence it. So it's important as well that we're not just like protecting the eyes, but then bathing the rest of our body in blue light. So that's another kind of reason for the lighting. But the real benefit of where you get the real benefit is like if you have, say, a room changed out or your main living area is changed out with the lighting, you're forced into it.
Yeah.
And it's the whole family, right? Because now when you turn on the lights, there is no blue light emitted from them, and yeah, at first it may seem a bit strange because it's a bit of a warmer color, but then over time it's just the normal sort of lighting in the home. And yeah, you don't have to jump in and like go, oh, right, we have to change every light in our house because that is going to get expensive. But you can kind of just look at where you're using light the most and start to change them out. And so you don't even have to change the main lighting in the home, even if it's like, we've got portable lamps and stuff like that. And that's just a place to start where you can have like one lamp, or you can put a floor lamp with one of our light bulbs in it. People, like I think we live indoors that we're over illuminated. Like there's so many lights that people have on. You don't realize like you can actually have one light on and provide sufficient light, right? Like in my own house, we do have the lights throughout the house, but most of them at night aren't turned on. I mean, at night, once we're finished cooking dinner, we have one bulb and one lamp, and it lights up all of our main big area, and it's perfect. It creates a low ambience, low light, enough to see and read and do whatever I want to do.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not this bright, stimulating light. So,
so just getting used to that fact that you shouldn't be bathed in these full-on, don't need to have every light in the house on at night time. Yeah. So that's, so people go and check that out. And there was one other thing I wanted to touch on. You talked on another podcast that I listened to about an app on your phone that turns your phone red, which I went and did in the middle of my run. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this straight away. So you've got a blog on your website. What's the name of the blog? Can you remember? How to turn your iPhone red or something?
Red. Yeah, so it's actually built into the iPhone. A lot of people don't know there's a way you can apply particular color filters, and then you can assign it to a shortcut. So what you can do is essentially triple click your phone at night, and it will instantly take all the blue light and make it to a red screen. So it's a little bit weird at night, but like if
I've done it.
You want to read an email or something, it's perfectly fine. And we've spectrum tested it with our spectrometer, and there's no blue light coming out from it. So
so that go and check that blog post out. We'll put a link down below to it in the show notes. And then the other one was F.Lux, and then Iris Tech. Iris Tech was one that because I've had the F.Lux one, Flux or whatever you call it. But Iris Tech do a slightly better one. What do they do?
Yeah, so very similar. So like F.Lux and Iris Tech, what they are is software that you can put onto your computer, and they will shift the levels of blue light based on the time of day. So as it comes into the evening, it will start to strip the blue light out. F.Lux is a free version. Then Iris Tech is maybe like $5 or $10. But what it does is similar thing, but the way they've done it more interacts with the hardware on your screens a bit, and it allows it to like we haven't really touched on what flicker is, but
we should talk that too.
So what it can do is it can actually help solve the flicker issue as well. Because when you start to dim or change screens with like software, it can actually start to increase the amount of flicker coming off them. So Iris Tech does a better job at that, and I just personally like it because the guy that created it's very passionate about it. So I like to support someone that's in that space and doing something that's very cheap.
So go and buy Iris Tech and get rid of that flicker. So let's just touch briefly on what the hell flicker is. This is like, we can't see it with our naked eye, but if you film with an iPhone, like I was doing a podcast last week under bloody terrible light, and the guy goes, oh man, that flicker's terrible, turn that light off. And you can see it through the screens, but you can't usually see it. But what is flicker?
So flicker becomes an issue with our modern lighting. So anything LED, again, has got flicker problems. So talked about the issue with LED lighting and the blue light problem, but now we've got all this light in our homes, the screens and everything. And what flicker is when we talk about power coming into the home, it's called AC power, which is alternating current power. And so that's the mains power that comes into all our homes. So what that is it's been pulsed kind of down the power line. So we've got the substation that holds the power, and the way they deliver power to your homes is with a frequency, and that frequency is like 50 or 60 hertz. And so they're pulsing it down because they can make it travel greater distances more efficiently. And so that comes into your home, it's pulsing at believe it, yeah, 50 hertz.
Yep.
So that means in the hertz is a wavelength cycle. So that means it's pulsing on and off 100 times a second. That's the power coming into the home.
Yep.
And so that comes into your home, and so your LED lighting is a digital light source. So when it's got power, it's on. And when it doesn't have power, it's off. So the pulsing power, AC power at 50 hertz, is making the light go on, off, on, off, on, off very, very quickly. Now, it never used to be an issue with as much with incandescent lighting. The incandescent lighting still did technically flicker, but the light, because it's a filament that heats up when it wasn't receiving power. It's not like the whole filament could shut down and stop producing light in such a short amount of time. So it technically had small amounts of flicker, but not to the point where it was causing the neurological stress and kind of problems that we get with the modern lighting. So what that does is, yeah, you've got a flickering light source that's coming in. Your eyes can't see it because it's happening so quickly, but your brain can recognize that that's turning off and on, off and on, off and on.
It.
And again, nothing in nature has a flickering light source. The sun is what we'd call a constant light source. It's always on, sort of thing. It's always burning. It's producing a constant light source. And so, yeah, the brain sees it as a stress response, and the symptoms are very similar to overexposure to blue light, eye strain, headaches, migraines, right? So you kind of like this recipe of like the flicker plus the wrong spectrums of light is really causing a problem. Anything that's DC or direct current source, so that's most things that are like battery powered. You'll notice, so like, yeah, anything that's battery powered doesn't have this issue because it's like a battery supplying power directly to the source. It doesn't need to use AC power, which is mains power.
Right. Now that's thanks for the explanation. Let's jump over now into red light and red light therapy and near infrared and infrared and red light. Big fan, use it every day myself in multiple formats. You have some amazing panels that have fantastic reviews. If you're going to get a panel, like I went around the block buying the wrong stuff and doing trialing things and testing things, but red light panels are super powerful and super good for health. Can you give us a bit of a brief rundown on why people should consider red light therapy and what it can do? That's a big question, but I guess and the different wavelengths and the
like what is red light therapy? What it does. So like at a high level, what red light therapy is we call it red light therapy, but it's actually red and near infrared light therapy. It's using very specific wavelengths of red and near infrared light that are very that been well researched to be very bioactive in our bodies. So if we look at the near infrared light, it's using very particular wavelengths of near infrared light that can penetrate into the tissue, and they're very much bioactive in our mitochondria. So they will help, essentially our mitochondria will be able to produce ATP, which is energy, essentially a lot more efficiently.
So it's using that cytochrome C oxidase. So in the mitochondria, which are your powerhouses of the cell, you've got the electron transport chain. And often when we have mitochondrial dysfunction, the first and the second complex very often are dysfunctional for many, many reasons. And so when we use red light, and this is actually also true with methylene blue, which I've been doing a deep dive into methylene blue, just released a podcast on it. It actually works a little bit similar to the red light.
Work very well together as well.
Work very well together, especially that 640, I think, or 660, one of those nanometer ranges where it particularly works synergistically together. But they're sort of bypassing those problematic, often those first complexes, and donating it to the cytochrome C oxidase complex, if you like. So you're producing more ATP, so you feel like you've got more energy, your cells have got more energy to do whatever they're doing. And what else is it doing, and what is the difference between red and near infrared?
So the main difference between red and near infrared is like the level of penetration into what tissue. So red light, commonly the beneficial frequencies of red light are 630 and 660 nanometers. And so the benefits we see through red light is particularly around the skin and skin health. So it's going to help with like anything to do with like wrinkles, aging, like blemishes, scars, scar tissue. Helps with hair growth as well. Not necessarily going to like make someone grow hair where they don't have it, but helps like where you have hair, like the health of your hair as well. And then near infrared light. Now there's a bunch of different frequencies of near infrared light, and this is what you should want to look for in your device to make sure it's kind of not just emitting one of them. Is you've got 810 nanometers, you've got 830 and 850, and they're able to penetrate much further into the body as long as there's enough intensity behind it. So they can go right into the tissues of the body, and that's where it's like having much more of an effect on like a whole bunch of like things around health, depending on where you're actually exposing it to. So it can help with like literally tissue repair, injury, pain, like arthritis. Can help like if you're using it on your thyroid, it can help with your thyroid to regulate that. There's a lot of research around using it on the brain, and particularly around the 810 nanometer. There's got a lot of research around brain and cognitive improvements and helping with brain conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's as well.
Yeah, actually, on that note, just briefly, I'm interviewing Dr. Marvin Berman later on this week, and
from Neuronic.
Yes, from Neuronic, and he's talking about the 1070 range.
I think 1060, 1070.
Yeah.
So particularly that's really, really focused around the brain.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got like what there's a little bit of a sweet spot because you've got infrared as a whole, right? And that's got near, mid, and far. But like when we're talking about the type of light that can really interact with our mitochondria and go through that cytochrome C oxidase process, it's from the 800 nanometers through to about that 1070. So what happens when you go further than that? So the further the nanometers go, the greater the level of penetration, the further it can penetrate in. But it gets to the point where the water in your body absorbs it versus the cells and the tissue. So it's finding a sweet spot. You come right down, into the red spectrum. It can't penetrate into the tissue, and then you go too far where it penetrates far enough, but it's just absorbed by the water in your body. So there's this kind of the sweet band in the infrared spectrum where from the 800 through to the 1100 nanometer mark, where that is really taken into the tissue, the mitochondria are like benefiting from it. And so particularly in the brain, there's been a lot of research around the 1060, 1070 nanometer mark in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and brain conditions. And so there are some very like high-end devices like Neuronic, like a helmet that's put on.
Yeah, can you get one of those?
It's quite a complex topic.
That's more specialized, which Dr. Berman will discuss for people that are dealing with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, TBI, those types of things. Tune into that episode because that's going to be very, very specific to that. But for general health, for athletic performance, for skin health, for mitochondrial energy in general, for mood support, there's just so many. Like, I don't want to go a single day without my red light. Maybe I'm overdoing it. And there is a biphasic response too. Like, you can do too much of this stuff as well. So you have to sort of check where you are and build up your tolerance, if you like. Would you say that's true?
Correct. Yeah. And like there's a point of like diminishing returns, right? More isn't always better. So you're not going to get to a point where it's like, well, if I do this and if I double it, I can get double the benefits. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It works kind of like exercise, right? It's when you're not using it.
Good analogy.
It's like adapting to it, right? You can't just keep doing more and more and more and gain more muscle. So it's kind of like the same thing. You elicit it elicits a response in the body, and the body then responds to that and then adapts to it. So then you can continue to do more and more and more, but you've got to continue to just do the small amounts that are required to elicit that response. So that normally looks like a maximum daily, and it's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes per area. So and that the dosing thing is a very, very complex topic as well.
Yeah.
Because like, what distance are you using the device? How much power is the device emitting and stuff. So it's not like a one size fits all.
No.
And to be honest, like even in the experts in the industry, kind of there is no like conclusive
We
things
need more
here.
studies, don't we?
No,
We need more.
and, there's a lot of studies as well, but the studies just go, well, we did this and it worked well, right?
Yeah.
So it's, but was it the absolute best way it could have been done? It's not widely known.
We need 100 more, because there's so many variations, like 10,
Correct.
do I stand 3 meters back or 1 or 10 centimeters or straight on the skin, or what wavelengths and how long, and do I combine it, and then the pulsing, and then the, and like with your devices, what would you recommend, how far away you should stand from it? Because there is heat also coming out. And what is, like, I've heard good and bad about the heat side of things. What was your take on that?
Well, I mean, ours is I consider one of the most powerful panels in the industry.
It is.
We had ours tested against, there's a this guy, actually, he's based in New Zealand as well, Alex Fergus, who is considered one of the leading kind of authorities in the space around, non-biased testing of panels and stuff. So he tested 17 different panels at the start of the year, and we were ranked number 2.
Yeah, I saw that.
Beat us by a very, very small amount in the US.
Amazing.
But because they're so powerful, you don't need to stand right up to them. I mean, we generally recommend a minimum distance of 6 inches away from it. It allows it to be a very quick and efficient treatment at 6 minutes. 6 inches, sorry. There is a small amount of heat that comes from the infrared light, and there is some. You're not trying to heat the tissue. That's not the goal. No, and that's not how you're getting the benefits of it, right? So, there is a point where you shouldn't be sitting right there and it's like,
it's not photothermal, it's photochemistry that we're after. Yeah.
So I mean, they're not an infrared sauna, so people get confused between sometimes light panels and infrared. So infrared saunas are generally using the far infrared spectrum, which is way out there. That's penetrating deep into the body, but it's not eliciting these biological responses. It's essentially it's far infrared light. It's making you sweat lots and producing a detoxification benefit, and it's heating the tissue. So very, very different. And you don't want to mix the two together as well, because they're doing different things, right? When you're wanting to do red light therapy, you're generally not wanting to heat the tissue significantly. Small amount's going to come from the panel, but that's fine. Versus infrared sauna, as you want to heat the tissue, you want to make it sweat. You're trying to like detoxify, get the toxins out through sweat.
So the advantage of the infrared sauna over a normal sauna is that it gets a deeper tissue response, but the heat is going deeper into the tissues.
Yeah, well, the main difference between an infrared sauna and traditional sauna is the wavelengths are penetrating you and making you making you sweat from the inside, versus a traditional sauna heats the air, and so they need to run like 3 times as hot. You can run an infrared sauna at like 50 degrees Celsius and sweat more than you'd sweat in a traditional sauna at like 90 degrees Celsius. So it's like painful to be in traditional saunas. Infrared saunas are quite pleasant, and you can sweat way more on them.
Wow. So that's the difference, and so that's the way beyond the 1100 nanometer range sort of thing. And so it's a very different modality, and you want to do them separately, because I've had people asking, well, can't I put a red light panel in my infrared sauna or in my sauna? And I'm like, no, it's not then an infrared sauna, and it's a different thing. Sorry,
even if you try, I was just going to say, even if you could combine them together, it's not recommended anyway. So when you sweat, so as soon as you start sweating in an infrared sauna, then you try to do red light therapy at the same time. Essentially, the light's going to reflect off the sweat, as opposed to you'll have a lot of reflection versus absorption of the light. So it's not really going to be, it's not going to be a very optimal treatment. So we really always say just separate the two. If you've got a sauna and you've got a red light panel, when you're heating your sauna up, do your red light therapy session for 10 to 20 minutes and then jump in the sauna after that. Keep it separate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And all of these are part of the oxidative medicine family. So I'm, got a hyperbaric oxygen therapy clinic. I often have my people doing, depending on their condition, obviously, but intravenous vitamin C, which is also part of that oxidative medicine family, and then hopping straight into the hyperbaric, and then also red light therapy is synergistic with hyperbaric. So, you know, it's a really good, all of these oxidative medicines. The other one is ozone therapy, which all belong in that oxidative medicine family, which means it causing an oxidative stress, but it's like a hermetic stress. And all of these things you can overdo or underdo, you know, so it's all about the right dosage at the right time, the right combination, and, you know, developing a protocol that's particular to you. But they're all very, very powerful, and I love them all, you know, especially the, you know, the red light and the hyperbaric and the intravenous vitamin C, I think is really, really, really powerful. And so when we're going back to the red light panels, you've got ones that pulse. You've got the 10 hertz and the 40 hertz is the sort of, why would you pulse the light when you've talked about flicker being bad 5 minutes ago?
So our panels have got the ability to pulse any frequency, anywhere from 1 hertz through to 9,999.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, I guess the main reason we put that functionality into our panels was, first of all, to future-proof them, because there's a lot of research that's quite new and coming out, right?
Yeah.
So and certainly in the pulsing realm, there's not heaps of research, but there is some that was starting to come out using different frequencies, showing different benefits and stuff. So, and yeah, at the moment, there's a lot of research more so around the 10 hertz and the 40 hertz. And essentially what they're saying, what they're showing in some of that research is particularly with the brain, the brain obviously has, you know, these different brainwave states, and particularly there's the ability to entrain the brain with using frequency as well, or trying to match the same frequency, and to put it into that state, which then can upregulate the ability for it to, what it's doing, it can just make it, so when the brain goes into that state, it can make that therapy more effective, essentially, is what they're showing, particularly using the 10 hertz and the 40 hertz. And it's also, like, they've shown, even not just on the brain, but using the 10 hertz frequency on the body as well, it can actually improve or increase the recovery response from it at a pulse frequency. It is a bit different than flicker. First of all, we're not pulsing the visible light, so we don't pulse the red light frequency. We only pulse the infrared, because that's the research has only been done on infrared light and pulsing.
Right.
As far as I can see, I haven't seen any research showing benefits to pulsing of the visible light frequencies. And it's a very, I mean, flicker can be very sporadic based on how it's coming down the line, and what they have, like dirty electricity is another kind of term that's looking at it. So this is a very uniform pulse. So 10 hertz is much different to like what you're getting from lighting in your home.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, for most people, they probably wouldn't use pulsing. It's probably a bit more of an advanced, what we would consider more of an advanced treatment.
Especially for brain. It's brain entrainment. I mean, I've got a device from Dr. Lou Lim, the Vielight, as well. And that's got the gamma and the alpha, the only two that I've got on there, and one's 10 and a 40. And I know that if I put it on the 10 on the alpha, you know, like, I'm just like nice and relaxed really fast. That's really cool. And the gamma, you're more focused and attention, and that's like the brain frequencies. And I've got a friend who's a neurofeedback specialist, and she could explain it way better than I can. But it's like you say, there's emerging research, especially around things like Alzheimer's and stuff, that's going to be quite interesting, and they do use that in their neuronic as well.
For the common person, they probably don't need to use pulsing, in my opinion. They don't need to overcomplicate something that's quite simple to use. And the only other thing to consider when you start using pulsing is it lowers the amount of total energy that the body's receiving in the same amount of time, because there's periods where the lights aren't turned on and aren't emitting light. It's not a 50% drop, because there's a thing called a duty cycle. The duty cycle in power is like, how long was it on and how long was it off? So the duty cycle in our pulsing is it's on 75% of the time and it's off 25%. So if you're running a pulsed frequency, you're getting 25% less light energy. So you'd have to increase your treatment time by 25% technically if you're trying to receive the same amount. And that's why we say, like, in most circumstances, unless you're really, is what we say for an advanced user who kind of is like, oh, I've got this exact condition, I'm trying to solve this, and I've found this exact piece of research that's showing I should be getting this amount of like energy and it should be pulsed at this frequency. Well, your panel's got the ability to do it, because why we put that in there, because then they have to go off and try and find some specialized device to do it, and if we just invested in this panel that
forward thinking.
So that's kind of, and that's why we made it like 1 hertz through to 9,999. But when you actually go into the pulsing menu, like, it's got some presets. You select 1040. I think there's 1040 and there's one other that would just, there's a preset to make it nice and easy, but you can literally go in and plug in any number you want, sort of thing.
Wow. So, I mean, that makes sense to future-proof what the studies may or may not come out with, and it's there and it's available in the advanced panels that you've got. Daniel, you've been absolutely wonderful today. I know I've taken up more than your standard podcast time. So is there anything else that we didn't cover, though? Like, there's just so much nuance to this conversation. I could talk for hours with you, but anything that we've missed?
Just one thing I'd also say on the red light therapy is, like, again, this is now in 2024, it's probably one of the most emerging, like, things that are becoming very, very popular. And there's a lot of gimmicky devices around. Like, there's all sorts of things that I'd say you've got to be careful about what you're getting into. It's
easy to fall prey to. Yeah,
it's not just red light, and you can't just have something that plugs into a USB charger and you think it's gonna provide all these benefits we've talked about today. I mean, something that's battery powered and flexible wraps and stuff, that's certainly much lower powered. And so when, if you look at, like, you're talking about the neuronic device, I think they're even using like lasers and different very specialized stuff in them. So generally these cheaper things that you can find on eBay and platforms are unfortunately not going to do what you think they're going to do. So you've really got to look for a device that has got the right wavelengths to start with. And so, like, our panels have got the 630, the 660 red, and then we put the 810, 830, and 850. So we've got 5 wavelengths all blended in relatively even amounts in there. So you're getting what we call like a broad spectrum there of all the different wavelengths. So you're going to kind of get the most benefit from it. And then it's the other measurement you need to look at is what's called irradiance. And irradiance is a measurement of, like, the intensity of the light. And that's measured in, like, milliwatts over a centimeter squared. And the industry also is now kind of like using measurements that are kind of misguiding people as well. So a lot of companies now will make that measurement with, like, what's called a solar meter. So a solar meter will measure this irradiance, and it will have an extremely high value. I'm talking like, close to 200 milliwatts over a centimeter square, which is extremely high. And the reason, because a solar meter is not the right device to technically measure it. And they're not lying, because that's the result they're getting with it. But they should be using a light spectrometer, which actually does a more accurate reading. So we actually list on our website, we list both, because we're kind of now, we're in this industry where we've got to have a comparative ability to compare to someone. So we put the solar meter, but you really want to see a light spectrometer reading.
Right.
And that should be, like, I mean, our panels are sitting at about 87 milliwatts over a centimeter squared. Generally, you're wanting something above 50 is good. So if it's above 50, it's good. The higher, now, more power is not always better. So that's the other thing is, whilst we've got a very powerful panel, you've got to be careful as well with, and what that just allows you to do is you can stand further back to get greater level of exposure over more of the body. But the other benefit of high power is what they show in the study is you do need quite a high level of power to get the deeper penetration. So if you're going like deep joint problems, or you're wanting to get deep into the tissue, you can't just have that frequency like the 810 or the 830 or 850 nanometer and not have enough power behind it. It won't penetrate deep enough. So for the skin level stuff, you don't need as much power behind it, so the reds, but that infrared is very important. So You kind of got to make sure you've got a device, and with our ones, you can turn the power levels up and down. You can change it anywhere between 1 and 100%. So again, if you've got something that's really powerful, but you find it too powerful, you can drop it down at least, but you've at least got the ability to turn it up. So generally, it's got to be our panels are well built. I mean, we've got like 10 fans on the back cooling it because there's a lot of power behind it. It's something that's just running off a little battery pack that's flexible, and you think that's going to produce the same results. They're really not the same things, but they do kind of come under this like red light therapy banner.
It's all
the user really needs to kind of do a bit of research to make sure.
And just listening to you, there's just so much more nuance to the conversation. The one last thing I did want to ask. Good for the eyes, bad for the eyes. Should you have the things? Because I've read lots of research. It's actually good for eyes and cataracts and all sorts of things. But also, you've got your things to cover your eyes. So what's the go there?
Yeah, it is good for the eyes, but I guess that comes with an asterisk, like so you can see for more details. And the issue is the power thing and the intensity. So there's absolute research showing, particularly like that the red light around that 660 nanometers and infrared light into the eyes certainly helps with macular degeneration, cataracts, just general eye health.
Wow.
But what the eyes don't like is heat and getting too much exposure to heat. And the infrared light coming in at that power is going to kind of heat and cause damage to the eyes. So there's a fine line between benefit and damage. And so our general recommendation is when you're using the devices and you're standing right close to them, we provide eye protection. And what the eye protection does is it reduces down the red and the infrared by about 80%. So that's one option, is to wear them. The other option is to lower the power right down on the device, or if you're not using it close up, it's generally fine to not have eye protection.
Right. So if you had it on your back or something and just in the room as an ambient thing, would that be good?
It's just like don't stare straight into
stare straight at it.
Like I mean, I personally sometimes don't wear eye protection, but I'm very conscious about what I'm doing. I'm very conscious that I might be looking off to the side and just getting indirect light into the eyes. I'm not getting that direct, because I just know that the intensity that these panels are putting out, and then that doesn't align to all the research showing, and the benefits to the eyes are a much lower intensity. Right. The wavelengths and the frequencies are correct, but then you
don't want the powerfulness of which we need for the rest of the stuff. But
correct. So that's why as a business, we're always very careful about what we say. We always provide the eye protection. We recommend eye protection, but
I was a bit confused on that front, because the research is there, right? It is looking good. Like it could be really powerful for people dealing with things. But on the other hand, and if you do have them on, you do come away going, everything looks sort of green afterwards. So just with added caution and maybe specific devices in the future, Dan, that could be made for the eyes, that are low output ones that could be specifically for that. That might be a future thing to do. Look, Dan, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Your company we're going to have a link down in the show notes. You can use the code Lisa to get a discount, and we'll put the links all in the show notes. But blockbluelight.co.nz, I think is your main website. And anything else people can follow you, where can they follow you?
So we're on most social media. So I mean, most like Instagram, I think we're Block Blue Light Official. We're quite active on there. The other place is on our website. We're quite active in like doing blog articles and
some great blog articles,
educational content through our email. So sign up to our email list, and we'll we won't spam with just sales stuff. I mean, we try to do an even blend of actual quite educational stuff. We're generally putting out a blog a week as well. Just on all things around the topic. So
brilliant. All right, Daniel, well, thank you so much for your time today and your amazing work that you're doing.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Cheers.